Okay, let's see what Katie Nimon's got to say.
Katie Nimon.
Mr Speaker, look, I think it's important to clarify for the House what partial strikes mean and how disruptive they are to the community. Because at the end of the day, I have worked in transport for most of my career, and I have seen examples where bus drivers will turn up for work and they will drive around the route with the door closed and refuse to let passengers on. Or they'll refuse to take revenue to subsidise the ratepayer-funded public transport. All of these things, not only do they detrimentally impact the bottom line of a regional council or a business, but they also affect the customer, the very person that every business and employee or public service and public servant purport to support and be there to work for. And so at the very end of the day, the purpose of this bill is to introduce balance to a situation that is currently out of balance. We are reintroducing a piece of legislation that was revoked in 2018 that is not saying that nobody can strike. It's not saying that nobody can partially strike. It's to say that there actually has to be a consequence for the impact that this has on a business, on a public service, on the customer, on the member of the public that is entitled to that public service or to that service that they are expecting to pay for. You know, another example is where partial strikes have been in the healthcare system, where yes, people have turned up to work, but they've taken half the number of, let's just say, MRI scans that they are supposed to. Now again, not only is this actually putting more pressure on the future workforce, it's actually really a critical healthcare concern. Now there are examples of this across all sectors. It's not just public transport, it's not just health. It's in some cases education, where the teachers, yes, they're on site, they're at the school, and they do that to avoid taking full strike action, which has its own repercussions, but they aren't taking class, or they aren't teaching certain things. Now who does that disbenefit? It disbenefits the public, and we are here to reintroduce the balance, and that is what this is about. It's all about limiting the effects that strike action takes on the consumer, on the communities and public service, because ultimately businesses and public service don't have the resources to respond to every single strike action, in this particular case partial strikes. They have no ability to have compensation or recompense for what happens. And in so many cases, actually, public service or businesses have to put on additional staff that aren't part of the strike action, pay them additionally to the person that they're still paying, because again, in this case, partial strikes, they might be on site, they might be reporting for duty, but not performing the duty. And so all of this has a cost. And so at the very least, to expect businesses and public service to be able to take some of that, in this case 10%, up to 10%, and take that as compensation for whether it's the logistics involved in the disruption, the additional cost of having to put extra staff on, the compensation required for customers, the follow-up that's required when that partial strike action is complete and we have to put extra staff on to cover the backlog of work. All of these things cost. And actually, that is absolutely at a disadvantage to the very people taking partial strike action because they are bargaining for better terms and conditions or pay. If it's costing more to cover that strike action, what is that doing? Because again, that's disproportionately affecting those people that are taking partial strike action. So again, I will summarise what I have said today, which is that in the end, this is about putting balance back into a system and a situation where it is disproportionately disadvantaging those people that are entitled to a public service, that at the most part it's people in public service that are disproportionately impacted by this situation, and the reintroduction of balance, bringing something back that we had prior to 2018 that is in step with the rest of the world. It is the norm around the world to be able to take this kind of consequence, that it's a very simple thing to expect that that is what we would do in this case. And so to be throwing our arms in the air saying that this is sending us back into the dark ages is absolutely untrue. It is a proportionate response to something that has a disproportionate impact on the public. And I think that when we go through the select committee process, we will hear just that, and I look forward to that process. I commend this bill to the House.
She really wants to talk to the manager. I'm sorry, what does she think a strike is? Why does she think people strike?
I mean, put it this way, now the interesting part is Nimon is a well-known bus company that went belly up after the last round of tenders in buses in the Hawke's Bay, where they lost the tender for the MOE runs.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, okay.
And so I can see why some of the things that has been described there has been worked on there, because they did lose a tender. Nimon's bus service lost the tender to Transit for the school bus routes, which is quite ironic because then Transit also lost their tender for the Wairarapa that now is with GoBus.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know what to say to her. It's like, what do you think a strike is? What do you think a strike is trying to achieve? It's supposed to be a form of protest. It's supposed to suck.
Yeah.
They're complaining because their work conditions suck. They're not getting paid enough.
Oh, I know.
We know this. We're just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, most of the convergents are watching the show. We haven't seen Dr. Eric popped up. So